Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. This week on the program, Mississippi's senior senator in Washington, Roger Wicker, on water outages in Jackson. The state's population center is still struggling to shore up an old and worn out water system. What will Congress do to help? Later, Mississippi Today's Adam Ganucheau joins us with an update from the state capitol. Where does legislative leadership stand on the issue of Jackson's water woes? That's all ahead this morning. Jackson City leaders are reaching out to state and federal authorities for emergency funding to finally upgrade the city's aged water system. This after almost 4 weeks of broken mains, low pressure, and boil water alerts for most of the city's 160,000 residents. 12 News' Alex Love filed this report on the city's pleas for help.
City of Jackson leaders continue to push for more than $100 million in state or federal emergency funds to fix a water system more than 100 years old they say is vital to keeping Mississippi's economy moving.
Over the weekend, the O.B. Curtis water treatment plant showed promising numbers with the PSI sitting at 85, bumping up to 90 this week.
I'm not sure that we will get back to normal. That is why we are requesting funding from additional resources in order to help us address that. But right now, we feel that the system is more stable. We are seeing gains in our tanks.
These additional resources would come under Governor Tate Reeves' emergency declaration to get up to $107 million in emergency funds from the state and federal government. Governor Reeves has pointed to Jackson infrastructure failures as a result of routine maintenance lacking proper funding for years. Following the ice storm, city leaders claim the burden is too much on their own.
We have talked exhaustively about the limitation of city budgets, the aging infrastructure, the increased effect of things like hotter summers, colder winters, and more rain.
This brought to light a lot of issues that have been plaguing the city for some time. And in order for us to fully address it, that's why we've been asking for funding.
On the next election ballot, Jackson voters could also choose to pay another cent in sales taxes. But even then, Jackson leaders predict only $13 million to come out of it annually for a problem worth about $2 billion.
Alex Love reporting there. So what can federal politicians do to help cities such as Jackson that are hard-pressed to fix these systemic issues with infrastructure? Our guest can help answer that question. Roger Wicker is Mississippi's senior member in the United States Senate. He joins us now by Zoom. Senator Wicker, welcome to Mississippi Insight.
Glad to be back with you. Thank you.
You've been watching the water crisis here in Jackson unfold since those awful winter storms hit the southeast. We weren't the only ones who were badly hit. What are your thoughts on how extreme weather has highlighted vulnerabilities in the nation's public infrastructure?
Well, there's no question, and it's not just Jackson. It's a lot of areas in our state and across the nation. We're all in it together. And of course, having 2 children and 6 grandchildren living inside Jackson, I'm keenly aware of the situation because I hear it on a daily basis. So we're aware of it and very, very interested in increasing our areas of federal help in this regard. But there are a number of things that are available to cities like Jackson, and we're helping and doing the best we can to get the information and get the funds necessary to rectify the situation.
You're a sponsor of a bill that would promote infrastructure bonds for local governments. Could you break that down for us in a brief?
Well, you know, municipalities and local and state government are eligible for tax-exempt bonds. A lot of times our cities have had to get tax-exempt bonds at a higher interest rate. Now interest rates are very low. It's an advantageous time for cities like Jackson to refinance. My legislation would allow early refinancing. It keeps the bond companies whole, but it allows local and state governments to refinance early. The interest rates are very favorable, and these tax-exempt loans are perfect for financing infrastructure projects such as water and sewer for large and small cities.
You introduced that bill in 2020 session, and you've indicated that you're reintroducing this bill this year. Why didn't this move forward?
We've had some opposition in the tax committees. They hold their jurisdiction very, very close, and we have bipartisan support, but we just haven't been able to make the case yet. But it takes two houses and super majorities in both to get that done. So we're still working on it, and I have Senator Stabenow, a Democrat from Michigan, as my across the aisle teammate on this. We're still working on it. Not every good idea gets past the first year.
You couldn't get it passed when you had control of the Republicans had control of the Senate and the White House, but now Democrats are in control. Do you feel like you can fare any better with the new Washington?
Well, we're 50-50 in the Senate, and something like this has to be bipartisan. We can make the case for it. Frankly, there was some jurisdictional opposition in the tax committees that we had to overcome. Not just the members, but some of these committees they're pretty well governed by some of the staff members that have been there for a long time. So but that's inside baseball. We're making the case, and it's a good case. Lower interest rates will allow cities like Jackson to refinance, get some more money in there at a favorable interest rate, and make it easier to pay for these sorts of things.
We'll have more with U.S. Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi when Mississippi Insight continues. With all the attention that Jackson has received because of the water crisis, do you feel fairly confident that Jackson's going to get the help that it now needs?
Well, yes, and there are a number of areas where Jackson and other cities can look for help. And of course, we have an open door policy with the Jackson leadership and also Hinds County leadership. We're by having an office in Jackson, we are there to work with them. But there's safe drinking water funds available. There's disaster money. I can tell you that there's some $46 million in the rescue plan that was passed by the Senate last week and by the House today. And so that money should be coming. They'll have to work through the bureaucracy. Some $46 million that will be allocated specifically to Jackson out of that bill alone. So we have always worked with local governments, as I say, not just Jackson, but all of the local governments. And we stand ready to assist with applying for these grants. There's water infrastructure financing available, and just a number of things that we can do to piece it together. Undoubtedly, there's going to be the need for things of this nature in another infrastructure bill, and we are working with ways to move that forward and get that paid for.
You kind of touched on it. The House just approved the American Rescue Act. That's something that you voted against. So what are your thoughts on that right now, and why did you vote against it?
Well, I voted against it because $1.9 trillion is way too much money, and only a small portion of it is going toward the immediate relief that we need. As a matter of fact, most of this money that has been passed and undoubtedly be signed by the president later on will not be spent this year. It'll be spent in the years 2022 and afterwards. Also, we passed 5 bills on a bipartisan basis in 2020, amounting to $4 trillion, and half of the bill that we passed in December has not even been dispersed yet. So it just seemed to me we ought to find out where we are, get the money out there that's already been authorized. At some point, this is going to add to the national debt, and this pandemic seems to be ending. It just seems to me that another almost $2 trillion being authorized at this point, when we're told that we're going to have herd immunity by the end of May, when every American who wants a shot, a vaccine, will have gotten one. It seems to me excessive. A lot of the money goes to 4 very democratic states, very big states that have surpluses. It seems to be a reward, a political reward to them, and I could go on and on and on. There's reparations money in the bill. It's a hodgepodge of things that I think will not smell particularly good to the taxpayers once it gets to the light of day. But the main thing is we've already addressed a lot of these issues, and the funds are yet to be dispersed. $2 trillion on top of that is way excessive.
Senator Roger Wicker, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your time.
I'm glad to be with you anytime. Call back.
All right, thank you, Senator. Coming up on Mississippi Insight, we'll check in on the state legislature. Are lawmakers ready to support Jackson water infrastructure? And what major bills remain in play this session? Adam Ganucheau joins us with the latest next. And welcome back. It's been another busy week at the state legislature, and our next guest has been keeping close tabs as lawmakers face emergency requests from the city of Jackson. Adam Ganucheau is editor-in-chief for our reporting partners at Mississippi Today. He joins us now by Zoom. Adam, welcome back to Mississippi Insight.
Thanks for having me, Byron. Good to be here.
Before we start talking about state politics, let's talk a little bit about the stimulus and the bill, the $1.9 trillion that was passed by the House and the Senate this week and signed by the president. Senator Wicker getting a lot of heat for praising a portion of that bill but voting against it. What do you make about what's going on there?
Yeah, I think he tweeted on, what was it, Wednesday evening, the day the House passed the bill. He tweeted support for a provision of that massive package that would send money to restaurants. Of course, he was swiftly criticized because he is one of, I think, every Republican in Congress who ended up voting against the ultimate package. And he voted against the $1.9 trillion package that passed, and he was criticized sort of for boasting about a piece of that, even though he voted against it. Byron, I mean, what I'd say is, this was kind of quickly pointed out. A lot of people jumped on him on social media for it. Senator Wicker, to his credit, did push the Restaurants Act. He was sort of one of the primary authors of the amendment that ended up passing in that ultimate bill that passed that would send the money to the restaurants. So I don't know. I tend to kind of think the backlash was a little bit overblown. He did vote against the package, but he has sort of been on record supporting restaurants and funding for restaurants as it relates to their dealing with the pandemic as we hit the 1-year mark here. So I don't know. I tended to think that was a little bit overblown, but certainly people have the right to their opinions on the matter.
And and he basically pretty much said that he doesn't have to support everything in the bill, but it could be some parts that he likes, but doesn't have to like the entire bill to vote on it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Just because you like parts of the bill doesn't mean that you're going to like all of it. I think that's a completely fair defense, and that's sort of the line from his office since the tweet got so much traction. But yeah, I think that's fair for Senator Wicker to think and to do, and that's sort of where I stand on it, at least.
Let's talk about state politics and what's been going on with the city of Jackson, with everything that's going on with the water crisis. What legislative response has been like so far for Jackson's request for millions in water system funding? What are you hearing and what are you seeing?
Yeah, so as it stands right now, it looks like the ball is completely in the court of the legislature. Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba, the first-term mayor of Jackson, has, he's made the ask. He's made two main asks of both Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, who presides over the Senate, and Speaker of the House Philip Gunn. Basically, support a bill that would allow the city of Jackson to increase a sales tax on certain retail items by 1 cent. That new revenue that would be created from this new revenue, like I said, this new tax rather, if the legislature signs off on it, would then be used to back large bonds. So the city would then borrow a lot of money using that new revenue to make some kind of immediate repairs and replacements of the current water and sewer system. The second main ask is for $47 million in what the mayor says is immediate emergency funding needed to make some necessary repairs on the city's water treatment systems. Both of those asks, I think, the lieutenant governor and the speaker received those asks warmly. And the third thing, circling back to the question you just asked me about, Byron, is the federal stimulus package. The legislative leadership on both sides think that that sort of tucked away in this $1.9 trillion package from Congress will be a lot of sort of money that the state legislature could appropriate to the city of Jackson, specifically for infrastructure and water needs. So those are the three ideas being considered right now. Lawmakers are in town. They're scheduled to be in town for another 2.5 or so weeks. So the clock is ticking on how exactly they'll decide to help out the city right now during this water crisis. But talks are continuing. I mean, they are considering those three main things.
And there's been a lot of talk about the relationships between city leadership and the state leaders. And this week we saw not only the mayor making a big ask, but the Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann was out giving water with the city council members. How important is that relationship that we're trying to see the dynamics of the relationship, especially with Councilman Stokes and the Delbert Hosemann?
Yeah, so the mayor and Delbert Hosemann, that there's been some tension there. We've heard whispers of that for several weeks at the Capitol. That tension kind of went public in one of the mayoral debates ahead of this year's municipal elections. Mayor Lumumba told this story about a meeting he had with Lieutenant Governor Hosemann, in which Hosemann kind of cleared the room at one point and basically said, we'd like the city to sell the Jackson Wiley Evers Airport for $30 million. That's how the mayor told it. Hosemann has not denied that that's how that meeting went, but the mayor sort of implied that Hosemann was trying to hold up potential infrastructure funding from the state over the airport, and Hosemann has pretty sternly denied that implication, at least. But yeah, Byron, I mean, you're right. The relationship between the lieutenant governor and the mayor has been a key part of sort of how everyone's thought about this at the Capitol. This is a current ongoing crisis that the city says it needs a lot of state investment for. So those relationships matter. Delbert Hosemann, at the end of the day, has a lot of sort of individual influence over the state's budget and also the state's bonding process. So, that's something to watch for sure. As of right now, the mayor did meet with the lieutenant governor this past week. They had by all accounts, a sort of respectful, productive meeting to talk about sort of potential state funding for the crisis. We're going to keep watching sort of how the dynamics of their relationship, perhaps could affect the negotiations at the Capitol. But for now, everything seems okay, and everybody seems to want to get something done for the city.
The governor signed a bill on Thursday that limits transgender athletes from team sports on the basis of genders they're born with. Why was this a priority?
It's a good question. We've been careful to highlight in our reporting of that bill that passed in both chambers throughout the entire legislative process. So whether it was committees that the bill started in the Senate, so that Senate committee, Senate floor, then House committee, House floor. At no point during the process could any lawmaker who supported the bill pinpoint a specific time in which this had come up in Mississippi. This is a priority because it's a national talking point for Republicans. It wasn't until Democratic President Joe Biden recently signed an executive order that makes it easier for transgender athletes to play the sports with the at least however they align themselves or identify themselves, whichever gender, that's the sports that they'd be allowed to play. So Republicans across the country have taken that and run with it and have tried to make this a political issue. But again, in Mississippi, this has not been a problem. We are now the second state in just this year to pass legislation like this. I think Idaho was the first. Governor Reeves, when he signed the bill, talked a lot about his daughters, his 3 daughters, and sort of the sanctity of women's sports and girls' sports, and wanting to protect sort of their livelihoods. Advocates who oppose this bill would argue that this is just not a problem. It's nothing that we need to deal with. Why would you focus a lot of time and energy on it? And I'll say this, Byron, I think that Governor Reeves going out of his way to hold a signing ceremony for this bill that ultimately has zero bearing on Mississippi to anyone's knowledge right now. He took the rare step of holding a signing ceremony to kind of tout his position on this. So I think that kind of tells you all you need to know about the politics of the moment.
Adam Ganucheau, Mississippi Today, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Byron.
All right, we'll talk to you again soon, and we'll be right back. Big thanks to U.S. Senator Roger Wicker and Mississippi Today's Adam Ganucheau for their insights this week. We'll be back next weekend for more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown. For all of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.